Welcome on to this edition of the Faster Beyond 50 podcast. It's awesome to have you with us. My name is Brad Nadauld. We've got Lindsey Parry with us once again today. Linz, nice to catch up, and a super interesting topic today. And we've got a specialist guest joining us. We're going to be talking about common injuries amongst the over 50s. But before we introduce our guest, how things going?
Yeah, pretty well, thank you. Yeah, and a great topic, to be honest. I mean, we are always striving to allow people to run consistently by reducing injuries. And so this is just such a cool topic to get in the expert and see what are the things that over 50s are battling with. So, yeah, looking forward to the topic. And just on a personal note, just really enjoying my running again. I've gone through a long, we'll call it a slump. I mean, I never stopped running, but I just wasn't feeling it, was struggling to lose weight, all the usual things that our people are struggling with. And then just really good couple of months now of consistency, engaged with one of our coaches, and Tutu, just, he's got a very similar philosophy to me, but just different enough, I think, to bring in a bit of, excitement, difference. Who knows what the real driver was, or maybe just knowing someone was looking over my shoulder. But just really enjoying running and starting to feel like I'm a youngster again. So at the moment things are really, really good.
Yeah, it's amazing what a bit of accountability can do when you've got a coach sort of just keeping an eye on things. And things are going amazing on my side too. As we stand now, it's 5 weeks to go till the Cape Town Marathon, which is the one that I've been training for a few months now. Training's been going amazingly well. Running better than I have in years. So, looking forward to it. And it's funny that our specialist guest today is someone who is very well known in my household, because she's been doing quite a bit of work with my wife, who's been struggling with a bit of aches and pains and niggles, but she's doing fantastically well. She's been doing some amazing stuff, and it's a great pleasure to welcome onto the podcast today. She is a rehab specialist and a phenomenal athlete in her own right as well. Dr. Kelly Kaulback. Kelly, nice to have you on the podcast with us today. Before we get into sort of what we're going to chat about, you've just recently got back from an incredible run yourself. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Brad. You snuck with that one in there about the athlete side. Just got back from running the Tour de Mont Blanc route, which pretty much follows the UTMB route. So it's a great adventure. I didn't do it in one hit, like the phenomenal elite athletes that do it as one race. I split it over 6 days to enjoy the views. Incredible adventure, about 2,000 meters of climbing a day and average of 29 Ks a day. So still, I think, good athletic holiday.
Impressive.
Kelly, that sounds absolutely amazing. Here at Coach Parry, we work with a lot of athletes who are sort of over 50s, and a lot of them come to us with injury issues, and you've been sort of instrumental working with a lot of them. What are some of the sort of prevalent injury issues that you see popping up right now in the over 50s running community?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, injuries are part of the parcel of running, essentially. So probably first opening point is they're not don't have to be a complete disaster. We don't have to catastrophize them, even when they are quite common. And the common injuries that I tend to see at the moment are definitely tendinopathies. So that's involving previously what most people might be more familiar with knowing as tendinitis, like Achilles tendinitis. It used to be called that, but more in contemporary evidence, it's moved away to now being called a tendinopathy. And that goes for the Achilles. You get an Achilles tendinopathy, the plantar fascia as well. It was plantar fasciitis, now plantar fasciopathy. And then up to the knee as well. You get your patellar tendinopathies, which sometimes interchanges with what's broadly known as patellofemoral pain. You get your quad tendinopathies, hamstring tendinopathies. So, and I think there are reasons behind why these tendinopathies are common. And then alongside that are our good old hamstring strains. They love some attention, and they seem to keep popping their head up time and time again as hamstring strains.
Yeah, Kelly, let me ask this. We often talk, and Lindsey, I don't know if you want to add something here too. I mean, obviously, we talk about the over 50s market and runners needing to do speed work. It is important, but I mean, Lindsay, you and I have spent enough time together that I know this, that the session in a running week that has the highest risk of injury is the speed session. So your over 50s market are I don't want to say they're in prime position for injuries. They are struggling. They're trying to do what they were doing in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, and now you're throwing speed work on top of that. Are we playing with fire here, getting people to do speed work, or is it a necessary evil, and then we just have to manage the process of how we do it?
I mean, I think there's a couple of things to unpack there, Brad. Essentially, one of the important factors around doing those high intensity sessions with the Fast Beyond 50 group is that we really are in a phase of life of use it or lose it. So part of the mechanism of that high intensity exercise is really to increase range of motion, increase mobility, and to help slow down or reduce the loss of neuromuscular coordination. So those are kind of the broad strokes of why we do speed work in this group. Obviously, people who are more goal-oriented and are trying to get faster, speed work also has a role to play there. But essentially what we are looking to do is to maintain range of motion and neuromuscular coordination. And so there is that risk of injury, but similarly by not doing those workouts or avoiding them to try and avoid injury, you'll open yourself up to those similar injuries every time you kind of need to do something suddenly, because your range of motion is slowly going to become compromised. Your coordination and neuromuscular facilitation is going to get worse. Of course, to mitigate against those injuries, we do need to look at where the entry point is and what the entry barriers are. What are people doing before we let them do the speed work? What should they be doing? What protocols should they go through before they get to that point? And I guess that's part of the reason why we got Kelly on the call, is to talk through some of those things around progressing into these protocols a little bit slower, looking at the strength training, looking at the potential areas to focus on to see if someone is possibly at a bigger risk of picking up a hamstring injury or tendinopathy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great place to start. Kelly, let me ask you this question. When we talk about tendinopathies, what are we talking about? Like, what is the sort of medical idea of a tendinopathy for us lay people?
Yeah, cool. So tendinopathies are your classic sort of overuse or gradual onset injuries. They're mostly related to high repetitive forces, same thing time and time again. And often sort of risk factors for these are a spike in load. So kind of touching on what Lindsay's just said, where are you coming from before you enter that high load of speed work, quality work, which is so crucial. So yeah, there's a number of risk factors for them, but essentially what they are is a gradual, I'm trying to pick the right words here, but because previously inflammation was associated with a tendinopathy, that's why it was called tendinitis, but there isn't actual inflammation in the tissue. There might be some surrounding inflammation, but it is essentially a gradual breakdown of that tendon. Now, the main job of a tendon is to produce force and to absorb force. It connects the muscle to the bone. And there are sort of varying severities of those tendinopathies. An immediate onset when you first start to feel some symptoms would be a more reactive phase, where the tendon's just saying, hang on, this is a bit too repetitive, this is a bit too much too soon. And that's, ideally, if you catch it there, the rehab process is a lot shorter. You can, quickly kind of get over it and get back into full training. And then secondly, it gets a little bit worse. And finally, it would be a sort of degenerative tendon, which is essentially what we really want to avoid. That takes a lot longer to fully then restore the health, the function, the capacity of that tendon. So it is a sort of very gradual degeneration of the tendon's ability to produce and absorb force, which is its main job.
So Kelly, let me sorry, Lindsay, I just want to jump in here. Let me just ask this question. Is it a case of the sort of sooner you catch it, the quicker you can rehab it, as opposed to just like having this pain that you're running through constantly and it just gets worse and worse and worse, that it's then going to take you much longer to bounce back?
Yes. like I say, without sort of catastrophizing things. So at your first sign of a little bit of pain, I mean, if we just pick the Achilles, that's not, you don't want immediate alarm bells, red flags to go off. We know that running is hard. Running does give you some aches and pains, and that's normal. So it is definitely a case of recognizing its onset, so your first notification of symptoms, and then seeing if that then does persist sort of for a few days, a week. And initially when those symptoms do start, it's not going to be when you're running. It's not going to be sharp, intense pain when you're doing a high speed session or something. It's likely going to be some more intense stiffness in the morning that might subside over the day, or it might be at the very start of your activity, but then it subsides, or it might be only after your activity where you get that sort of increased, what starts essentially as increased intensity and a kind of stiffness type of feeling, can be a little bit of an ache. And the key there is to then, if we can catch it there, it is a lot sort of easier to manage than if we allow it to get more intense and more persistent. So not only waking up with it, but then starting your exercise, it continues through your exercise, it's still there afterwards. That's when we've kind of let it maybe get a bit too progressed and a bit more complicated management.
Yeah, so Kelly, I am thinking out loud a little bit here, which is sometimes dangerous. But one of our real key drivers in this population group, fast beyond 50, is the strength training, and in particular the kind of neglect that people have around strength training. Losing strength through their 30s and 40s, and I would assume that by association, the tendons, ligaments, muscles, they are all going through this degenerative phase. Now, we obviously put a very high emphasis on the strength training early. A lot of people are coming from a background where they aren't doing the strength training. And then couple that with the fact that we're changing the way that they train and introducing these higher intensity workouts to improve range of motion, etc., as I went through just now. Much like in the late 90s, early 2000s, when rugby in particular, but many sports really professionalized and people hit the gym and really started to train hard, and we saw like a huge increase in hamstring tears in particular, but also tendon ruptures. So we're not quite in the tendon rupture department here, but could there be like a causal link there of literally we are making people strong quite quickly, and muscles get stronger much quicker than the tendons from that repetitive stress? And so should we be looking at adjusting our protocols to really allow a greater period of time for the tendons almost to catch up to that increase in muscle strength that we are doing in the short term? I guess the short question is, are we actually contributing to that risk by making people strong enough to handle workouts that their tendons aren't quite ready to handle?
Oh, that's a very good question, Linz. I think my initial thoughts on that is it's really going to depend where you're coming from and what base you have, because I mentioned very briefly earlier that one of the major risks for tendinopathies in particular is a sudden spike in load. And that can be a sudden spike coming from many different places. It can be from the running, it can be from strength training, obviously cumulatively, and it can be from other things in life as well. If you got a very active job, etc., it's all cumulative load. And if there is that sudden spike, then yes, even though the addition of the strength training is a great thing in the long run, there might be that initial acute increase in load. But if somebody's coming from a reasonable base and a gradual progression into it, then I wouldn't say that it's necessarily a sort of adding to the risk or adding to the problem. I think as you've already made clear, the strength training really is key, and tendons do like load. So I don't think it's necessarily allowing maybe longer time for those tendons to adapt. It is just ensuring, which is obviously where the Coach Parry running programs are just hit the nail on the head, is that structured progression. And where we bring in the strength training from the side as well is ensuring there's kind of periodized blocks where there are gradual progressions in the strength work, and trying to include strength work that really do speak to the tendon. So the strength work doesn't look like high repetitions at high intensity, because that is just the same repetitive forces and load that the tendon will be getting from running. Load for tendons looks more like heavy, slow stuff that really kind of puts the tendon under strain, forces it to put down a bit more collagen, which is what it's made from, and actually get stronger. So it's as much about the overall load, but it's also about the type of strength training that I think can really help. And that's especially in the over 50s, females, etc., where we really try and encourage true strength training, actually getting some load through the joints, through the muscles, through the tissues, and even moving away from tendons, just the benefits that has for bones as well, with those natural degenerative aging processes that we can't hide from.
Cool. I know Brad wants to get into the kind of how do we assess if we're at risk, and then, okay, what do we do about it? But before he jumps in there, I just want to quickly ask, with Achilles in particular, because that is something I see a lot, but just tendinopathies in general, are there any like real short-term things you can do to just really alleviate pressure on the tendon outside of rest? Like things that you can do that can they allow you to continue running while you go through the process, or even, cycling or some other non-impact modality, but some real short-term tips on how to deal with a tendinopathy that you can feel starting to develop. And then I'll let Brad take it away with the kind of broader concepts around identifying risk and addressing risk.
Cool. So I'll try to keep it brief, not to give you a whole sort of separate podcast on this. But there are a few. So I'm coming back to that load word, and initially, at that first recognition, is then to just take a quick step back and look at overall load. So it's not to immediately stop. Linz, as you've said, it's, what can you do whilst you continue to train? But it is just having a quick glance at overall load and checking, do you maybe just need to reduce it a little bit? Is there some volume where you can dial it back just to allow for maybe an increase in additional strength work to get the tendinopathy under control or stop it from progressing to something more intense? So it's a big picture sort of look at what you're doing at the moment. And then two things that I've seen are just really effective and work well for tendons, and that's some isometric work, because isometrics means essentially holding in one position. So you're not asking the tendon or the connected muscle to get longer or shorter. It's staying in the same length and holding it under tension. So for an Achilles, you would be standing off the edge of a step with your heel off the back, essentially on the ball of your foot, maybe single leg if you can do that, and holding it there for 45 to 60 seconds. That it has an analgesic effect, which means pain relieving. So especially if you do wake up with that first initial stiffness, something you can do immediately. So it can have that sort of pain relief, but at the same time, keeping it under tension, even though you're not straining it by asking it to get longer or shorter, for 45 to 60 seconds. At the same time, you're giving it a little bit of a sort of dose of endurance work to maybe help it get stronger. And then secondly is our eccentric. So we try and make sure those are in the strength program, and that's pretty much the opposite end of isometrics, and that's putting the tendon under tension in a long position. So staying with the step example, if you're standing on a step and you rise up onto your toes and then coming down really slowly, so as you're coming down and that tendon's getting longer, taking your time with that, putting it under that like heavier, slower load, are just sort of accessory things that specifically for the Achilles, but the same principle applies to others, whether it's the hamstring or quad patella tendon associated with the knee. Those are kind of things day to day or in the morning, in the evening, alongside other things training that can maybe just be a little bit of a helping hand.
Brilliant. Kelly, are there any specific sort of like running mechanics or training habits that people that we're seeing in the over 50s are doing that are increasing the sort of risk of developing a tendinopathy? If you're over 50 and want to recover from sessions faster, run pain and injury free, and improve your endurance, then be sure to join Lindsey and I for our upcoming Faster Beyond 50 Masterclass. In it, we'll show you how we helped a 70-year-old run a 47-minute, 18-second 10K and how you can take those exact same principles and apply them in your training. Simply scan the QR code that's on screen right now or click on the link in the description below to save your seat in the training now. We look forward to seeing you there.
Short answer, usually doing too much. Linking into the training philosophy and principles of Coach Parry is doing the slow run slowly and taking the rest when the rest is prescribed. Rest is part of a program. So just like when it's in a calendar that somebody has a speed session and they go and do the speed session, when there's rest in the calendar, they must do the rest. So I think, because what we do see in our over 50s, which is on one hand a great thing, is people wanting to do everything they can and do as much as they can, and really, they motivated and disciplined in following a program, but that can sway to the other side of doing too much and complicating things far too much. So trying to do every strength session, every strength exercise under the sun, trying to run their longer runs faster because they feel good, and it kind of proves that they're feeling good. So I think it's really sticking, having that discipline in what is prescribed, including the rest element, allowing the rest, and then being simple, focused, and specific in the rest of what you're doing. Where the Coach Parry running program helps, but the strength prescription as well should be the same.
All right, cool. A lot of it, by the sounds of it, is self-inflicted. People just trying to do too much too soon. Let's talk about the actual treatment of tendinopathies. And I mean, this is a broad topic. I mean, not all tendinopathies are created equal, and the severity of each one's also I'm guessing the treatment would depend on the severity of the tendinopathy. But in general, is this the type of injury that as soon as you feel it, you need to stop? Can you train through it? What's the best way to go about treating a tendinopathy?
Brad, you opened a can of worms there by using the word treatment. Because treatment and rehab are two very different things. But it's a good point to maybe pick on. So treatment is essentially something that's done to you. So if you are going for a massage or electrotherapy or needles, taping, I mean, there's just loads of treatment modalities out there at the moment, which can be overwhelming and be really, really, really expensive. Those are, I'm not saying they're not useful and don't do them, but those are treatments. They're going to maybe help with symptom management and maybe some acute relief. They can buy you a short window of better quality of movement and relief of symptoms to then actually do the rehab. So then, just to be clear on that, the rehab is something that you have to do yourself. That is the only thing that's going to fix any injury, but specifically if we're staying with tendinopathies. So coming sort of back to your one of your questions there was, what do you do? Do you have to stop running? Do you not? How do you manage it? And previously, back in the sort of 90s, early 2000s, the initial approach was stop, rest, immobilize, and completely kind of remove all load, wait for a bit, and then get back into things. But that's gone. That's not a good approach anymore. Contemporary evidence says reduce load or have a look at load to make sure that you haven't spiked it too much. And that you aren't doing too much right now, because it's always a balancing act as well. When you do need to do some rehab, it means you're going to increase your strength load. You're going to be having to spend more time on that. You've only got so much pocket money, so you have to balance where you're spending your pocket money. So if you're spending more on rehab and strength, you're going to have to spend a little bit less on the running, sort of short-term sacrifice for long-term gain. And so it's not having to completely stop, but definitely reduce so that you have the extra pocket money to spend on rehab and strength and really getting that good dose of load, specific load that's appropriate for the tissue, whether it's a tendon, bone, muscle, ligament, to then build it back up to its full capacity and function and ability to do what it's meant to do. So it is also definitely a process. And sometimes I think what gets missed in the rehab process is the middle block. So the first little block would be, you've got some symptoms, you've recognized that you need to do something about it, and you take that first step to perhaps reduce your running, to spend more time on the rehab. You start doing some rehab, hopefully things improve, pain gets better, things are feeling better, and then we tend to jump from step 1 to step 3, which is then getting straight back into running. But that middle step, step 2, is where patience and persistence and consistency is really needed, because in that step is where we really develop the tissue's ability to do what you're going to ask it to do later on. So in that first phase where you've got pain, symptoms, you can't do much that's functional. You're not going to do much that looks or feels like running. And then usually it gets skipped and we go back to running, or full running. And that sort of middle block is where everything needs to be consolidated, and we progress from doing kind of more isolated, static type of stuff to then returning that tissue, muscle, tendon, etc., back to what it needs to do. Can it jump and land and decelerate and absorb and produce force, and all those qualities that are then needed, because you're going to ask it to do that again as you gradually then increase your running load again. So maybe final point on that is like, okay, if you don't have to stop completely, then how do you manage it? And for 3 out of the 4 common tissues, so for tendons, ligaments, and muscles, the evidence does say there's no difference in outcomes between training pain-free versus allowing a discomfort level of up to 3, maximum 4 out of 10. And I'll just put a note there on bones just now. But so if 0 is absolutely nothing, pain-free, and 10 is the most excruciating, severe pain you can imagine. 0 to 3, maximum 4, discomfort. I don't like to say pain, because if we're talking pain, it's usually become sharper and more intense, and that usually nudges to 5, 6, 7 above. So discomfort, that's an indicator that things are under control. If you're doing the right rehab work, you should be able to continue. If you're feeling that same level of discomfort with running, you should be able to continue, whilst you're taking care of things. If it nudges up to, 5 out of 10 and changes to a sharper pain, that's then the indicator to come back a bit, dial it back. And so just the kind of, responsible disclaimer on that is when it's bones involved, so our stress fractures are probably the most common bone-related injury, but there are other bone injuries. If it is bone-related, bones, you cannot train with pain when it's a bone. So the same rule doesn't apply. Bones are 0 out of 10 discomfort, pain, as your indicator to progress and to carry on.
Right, that is super, super interesting. Kelly, as you were saying that, I was having a bit of a chuckle to myself, because I think a lot of people fall into this where I'm so guilty of this. I'm going to pay a physio to treat me, and then it's going to be fixed, and then I'm going to be back to normal. And Lindsay can attest to this, but I've been struggling with a bit of a dodgy hamstring for a few months, and I've spent tons of money on physios. I've seen different physios because this physio is not fixing it, so I'm going to the next physio, and it's just the same story over and over. And then they'd give me some exercises to rehab, and it's like, no, I don't want the exercises. I want you to stick needles in my hamstring, and I want you to massage it, and that's going to make it better. And it's not making it better. And then I was chatting to Shona, and she asked me the question that everyone asks me, and I hate the question, but is, are you doing strength training? And the answer was no. And as soon as I started doing the Coach Parry strength training, literally within 2 weeks, the thing is sorting itself out, which is, again, it's not the answer you want to hear, but that is the answer. It's like we all want sweets and candy, but that's not what actually is going to make you better. You need your vegetables, and strength training is your vegetables.
Yeah, absolutely, Brad. You have hit the nail on the head, and I don't want to as I said before, completely swipe all of those treatment modalities off the table. They do have their place. They do have value. Everyone loves a massage. I love I love a massage. But it's just understanding what's possible from those treatment modalities. And like you say, you can quickly create a dependency if it's something that you have to keep going back for again and again and often. Then that's essentially a dependency, and you aren't actually making a change. You're treating symptoms. But like I said before, there's benefits. Whether it's needles, whether it's taping, massage, electrotherapy, ultrasound. I mean, there's loads out there. They can play a role. I mean, we can't ignore the psychological element of injury, and they can play a role in kind of a short window where you can buy yourself that sense of feeling better mobility, better quality of movement to allow you to then do your strength training. So, if you go for nice massage that kind of makes you feel a bit more mobile, you can move your shoulder or knee or whatever it is a bit easier, you're more likely to then actually go and do the exercises that you need to do that are actually going to make the difference. So they do have their place, but it's just that awareness of what they're actually going to do for you.
Absolutely. Lindsey, anything for you want to add?
My microphone first. No, that's really, really good. Look, I love having these kind of conversations. We don't have them often enough. And one of the things that was really good about COVID and lockdown and no races was this ability to really start people out right. And I think if there's a lesson to take out of this conversation outside of the treatment, is like, how can we get to a place where we don't want to put people like Kelly out of business, but if we try to think of an ideal world where we could get to a point where we really reduce the number of injuries, which is literally our stated motto, if you like, in Coach Parry, is running pain and injury free. That's really what we are after. It's this idea that regardless of where you come into the system or the reason that you come into the system, it is always worth taking proper stock and accepting that some of our short-term goals may be compromised, but if we do it right now, our medium and long-term goals, as well as just pure quality of life and reduction in frustration, is absolutely worth it. So yeah, I think if we get people into trouble, then yeah, it's also nice to know what to do and where to go. But my big takeaway here is like really toning it down at the beginning, so that you can increase the likelihood of success down the road.
Yep, absolutely. Kelly, it's been awesome catching up. I think we could chat for days, and we'll probably get you back on in the future if folks have got questions or if they need any assistance. They're more than welcome to reach out to us. Just so that everybody knows too that you do the odds online consult as well with regards to rehab. You are a magician when it comes to doing those sorts of things, and I'll pop the link into the show notes and the description of this video and podcast as well. If somebody wants to book an online rehab consult with you, they're more than welcome to do that. But anything you'd like to add before we wrap things up?
Thanks, Brad. Probably only that magician is the wrong word, because essentially it's, I can tell you what to do, but you have to do it. And that's where actually the kind of online approach works. I found to be really effective, because I cannot put my hands on you. I cannot do it for you. And really my job is just to try and sort of educate and empower you to go and do what needs to be done. So yeah, really just to back up what Lindsey was saying there as well, is short-term sacrifices sometimes for long-term gains. Sometimes, we want to run that marathon now in 12 weeks, and sometimes that's even too short without injury. But it's really, especially in our over 50s group, we want running to be sustainable and enjoyable. And for that, sometimes we need to really put the foundations in place, get those building blocks, And then people, you'll be A for a way, really enjoying running and being able to do it for much longer than over 50s. Maybe we can start an over 80s podcast one day.
I love that. I love that. Kelly, thank you so much for your time. Linz, as always, as well, great to catch up with you. We look forward to catching up again next week. Make sure you like and subscribe to this podcast as well, and whatever podcast player you listen to it. If you're watching on YouTube, please do give us a like and a subscribe as well, and we'll catch up with you again next week. From the three of us, take care. Cheers.